you can put all your sensors, temperature, humidity, light level, audio level, and chemicals. So we also measure something like a dozen different chemicals, nitrogen oxide, hydrogen sulfide, carbon monoxide, etc. Okay? So the floor plan looks a bit like this. Let me try to zoom in. Okay, so this is the floor plan. Okay, so you might not be able to see from the back, but each of these brown dots is a sensor node. So we have 23 sensor nodes across the building. To give you a dimension of what it is, these are the beams, the building foundation beams, the blue ones. They are each 7 meters apart. But that's the standard issue of US buildings here. Any of the old buildings you go to, we see the beams, they're 7 meters apart. All right, I think they must have borrowed it from HDB or something like that. Okay, all right. So these are all the sensor nodes, as you can see. And the green ones are the Wi-Fi APs. Okay, the Wi-Fi APs. Okay, so we have altogether, I believe, 7 APs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 APs. And the rest are sensor nodes. So these sensor nodes are collecting data all the time. So aside from the environmental conditions, we also loaded an open source Wi-Fi modem code called WRT. Anyone heard of WRT? Yeah. So we configure it not to perform communications, but rather we configure it to sniff Wi-Fi devices. All right? So it will be able to detect Wi-Fi devices in the environment. So you have its MAC address, then you know whether it's signal strength, then you know what is the mode that is in, whether it's in what we call probing mode or associated mode. All right? Associated means you log into NUS. Okay, associated mode. So we're collecting all this data, which you could use for research and for experimental studies. All right? So all this data is collected and deposited in a common repository. You can access it if you want. You can play with the data if you want. Okay? And that common repository is this guy, datacommons.nus.edu.sg. All right? So if you log in, which I'm doing now, so you use your normal NUS account. You also be NUS STU E something, right? Okay. So we have different things. This was data that we collected a few years back. We stopped collecting this last year, which gives you a metric of how crowded are each of the canteens. Okay. Then this is a measure of all, you remember I showed you all the devices we collected on campus of all the Wi-Fi last lesson? Yeah, this is where you can find it, the Cisco MSC data. All right, and you specify the zone and everything here. And you can get live data and historical data. Okay, so all this is publicly available. Okay. Then we had this pilot, which was the shuttle bus and the Wi-Fi hotspot. I told you about that last week as well. So this has already been decommissioned, the system. But again, we have all the historical data which you can download. We also have all the NEA data. All right, what is the weather, the day, whether raining or not raining, temperature, humidity, and all that. NEA website also provide this, but they don't archive it. So they only provide what is today's weather. Okay, so we archive it. So if you want to do studies to say, oh, were the buses slower last time on this day? Was it raining that day? You can come back again and check. Okay? We also have the LTA data. The LTA data is the Land Transport Authority. You know, this is where they tell you whether got what accident on what highway and so etc. and road works and all that. You know? Okay, the things that you listen to the radio whenever the announcer saying whether there's an accident or congestion somewhere. So it's all archived here. Okay, and finally is our IoT data. So you specify what week and what day and so on. You can get it here. All right. This floor plan is one only showing you the Wi-Fi access point. It doesn't show you where the sensors are. So if you're interested to play around with this data, you can come here. Okay, to play with the data. All right. So you can specify what starting week. So let's say I want something that was back in January. So this week, I submit to download. It's a CSV is like Excel, you know? CSV, a zip file. Okay, all right. And the file contains all this information. All right. Okay. So you have the AP, the set of the APs nearby, the Wi-Fi APs, then all the devices that were detected. Then this is the temperature and humidity. These are the gases that we are detecting. Light level, sound level, all right? Okay, and so on. So for example, you say, hey, did they really turn off the aircon that day? You know, middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning. Then you can check. Right? Then you can check all this, right? So we built all this over the last few years, but now most of this is finished, the projects, but we still archive it in case people want to play around with the data. Any question? Okay. All right. So next week I'll show you something else. Cannot tell too many stories, I cannot finish my syllabus. All right, I was told that I did not complete my tutorial last week. We didn't finish 2 of the questions. So let me very quickly finish those 2 in tutorial 2. All right. So I'm not sure where I stopped. Cannot remember now. Old man cannot remember nowadays. Okay, let me just start with 3 if I have not done it yet. What are the relative advantages and disadvantages? I think I've done it, right? Persistent and non-persistent CSMA. Number 4, I'm not sure I've done. Relative advantages and disadvantages of CSMA-CA and CSMA-CA with RTS-CTS. Okay? Alright, now CSMA-CA is that you listen to the channel to see whether it's idle or busy. That's the first thing. Right? And if it's idle, there is a deferment time. We call it the DIFS, SIFS. Alright, before you attempt to send data. And that's the collision avoidance part. So that it helps to manage the collisions that could potentially occur. Okay. So what it doesn't do, what CSMA-CA doesn't do is that it doesn't take care of the hidden and exposed terminal problem. Alright, it doesn't do that. Alright, so CSMA-CA with RTS-CTS handles the hidden node problem, but it doesn't handle the exposed node problem. Okay, if you recall, a hidden node is that I've got 3 nodes, okay, and node 1, node 2, node 3. Node 1 and 3 cannot hear each other. Alright? They can hear the guy in the middle. This one can hear the guy in the middle. But because 1 and 3 don't hear each other, they're hidden from one another. And so potentially, 1 and 3 could be transmitting data to number 2, and then it's colliding. Alright, so that's the hidden node model. So RTS-CTS will take care of that problem. Okay? It doesn't take care of the exposed node. Okay? The exposed node is taken care of by an enhancement of the RTS-CTS to include RRTS, which is in the nodes that we covered. Okay? RRTS. Okay? So that's the difference. So which one do you select? Which one do you select? So if you want to take care of hidden node, then obviously with RTS, CTS. Alright? Okay? And that will help to improve the situation. So RTS, CSMA CA with RTS CTS is what you have in your Wi-Fi. Your Wi-Fi does that. Okay? Now, what that means is that because it does that, and if you buy one of those new Wi-Fi mesh, you know, you buy 2 boxes at a time, okay, and you have multi-hop, then it still doesn't solve the hidden node problem. It improves the CSMA CA in terms of the collision and so on. It helps to improve the hidden node problem with RTS CDS, but it doesn't improve the exposed node problem. Okay? All right. Any question? Okay, not, then we go to the last one. So this is about timing. All right, about timing. We didn't get to do an example like this in detail. We did a very simple example during the lecture. Suppose the propagation delay is alpha, SIFS is 3 alpha, alpha as well, DIFS is 3 alpha, RTS and CTS are 5 alpha respectively for CSMA CA with RTS CTS. What is the earliest time for the receiver to send the CTS? Earliest time. Okay, so let's take into consideration what is the sequence of events here. Okay, from the moment the channel is free, okay, this is all occupied. It's free. Suppose I want to send to you. I want to RTS you and you CTS me. Okay? Send RTS, CTS. So, for me to send the RTS, I have to wait a DIFS first before I can send. Then I send my RTS. Alright? Now, if it was a perfect channel, this is me now. This is you now. If it was a perfect channel, meaning that 0 delay or anything like that, alright? For you to send the CTS to me, you have to wait SIFS here, and then you send your CTS. Right? That is the sequence of events. Got it? Alright, so the question is asking you, what is the earliest time for the receiver to send the CTS? So the earliest time is this amount of time. Alright, from the moment the channel was available. So that's part A. Any question? Alright? Okay, so now let's take a consider how long does this take? This will take a time of DIFS plus the RTS plus the propagation delay to get to this side. Correct? Then over here, you have your SIFS. So plus your SIFS. So that's the earliest time that you can wait before you send the CTS. Alright? So DIFS, in the question, it was saying this is 3 alpha. RTS is 5 alpha. Propagation delay is alpha. And SIFS is another alpha. Okay? That's how you calculate. Question? Okay, so that's part A. So 5, 8, 10, and alpha. So everything is in terms of alpha. Alright, next one. If the data packet is 100 alpha long, what is the shortest time for the receiver to send the ACK signal? So let's continue with this. So now you send this guy already, right? Okay. Now we have to make certain assumptions here. Do we wait DIFS to send the data, or do we wait SIFS? What do you think? Which one do you think? Do I wait DIFS to send the data here? So that is from here. Okay. So do I wait DIFS or SIFS before I send my data? It should be SIFS. Why? Because you already done the whole handshaking to say you two are talking. We already done the handshaking. Everybody heard us doing the handshaking already. So you shouldn't need to wait for DIFS. You understand? Okay? So this should be SIFS. Then you send the data. Finish already? You say what is it? When is the shortest time before you send the ACK? So again, you have the SIFS, and then you send your ACK here. Right? Okay? So how's the shortest time? Shortest time will be this time. From here all the way to okay? Is it clear? All right? So shortest time for the receiver to send the ACK signal. So again, you add it up. DIFS plus RTS plus propagation. SIFS plus CTS plus propagation. SIFS data plus propagation. Then plus SIFS. Okay? Those are all your facts. So it's DIFS plus RTS plus propagation. Every time you send something, there must be a propagation delay. So that's the first part. Okay. Then SIFS plus CTS plus propagation delay. Then the last part, SIFS plus data plus propagation delay. And the last one is the SIFS. Okay. You add it all up. So this is 3 alpha plus RDS is 5 alpha plus alpha. This is alpha plus 5 alpha plus alpha plus alpha plus 100 alpha plus alpha plus another alpha. Okay? That's what it is. All right? So you do this systematically, you won't go wrong. Any questions? Okay, the part C, why is SIFS kept smaller? Because SIFS has higher priority because it's shorter. So if someone who wants to send something after SIFS, that shorter period means he get priority. Okay? And can you make SIFS 0? Can I make it 0? 0 time. No need to wait here. 0. Cannot. Because whatever it is, you are either transmit mode or receive mode. There is a finite time to switch from transmit mode to receive mode. It's not 0 time. Okay? So it's not 0 time. So again, I will load up, if I'm not already done so, I'll load up the answers for tutorial 2 and tutorial 3. Okay. Any questions? All right, so we lost half an hour there. So may not be able to finish now. Let's see how it goes. Okay, we're going to talk about wireless mesh networks. Okay, but before I do that and before I see it, let me see. Have you copied this out? Because I want to put it back on the announcement afterwards. I'll let later. Okay. So let's see what are wireless mesh networks. Okay. So if you look at the figure here, look at the figure. There are a lot of words here, but it's not so difficult to understand this. Wireless mesh network is kind of like a hybrid of all these guys. You see, it overlaps all this. It overlaps sensor networks, it overlaps ad hoc network, it overlaps hybrid wireless network. Okay? Basically, think of a wireless mesh network as an extension of ad hoc network with gateways to the backbone infrastructure. That's what's a wireless mesh network. Okay? I repeat. Wireless mesh network can be interpreted as an extension of an ad hoc network. Ad hoc network is infrastructureless, right? Infrastructureless. So it's an extension of that gives you a connection to the backbone internet. Okay? Which means the wireless mesh network will have routers or gateways to the internet. Whereas an ad hoc network by itself may not have that. Alright? Okay? So that's basically what it is. Alright? So it's an extension of a multi-hop ad hoc network. Basically the important line is this one. Extension. Alright? That gives you connection to the backbone or infrastructure network, which typically will be the internet. Okay, so the difference between the two, ad hoc network and a wireless mesh network, both are multi-hop. Okay, we saw all those routing protocols that you saw earlier. Okay, the nodes in the ad hoc network are typically wireless and possibly mobile. In the case of the mesh network, it can be mobile as well, but usually some of them are not so mobile, especially the gateways. Right? In the case of ad hoc, it's infrastructureless. In the case of mesh network, it relies on the backbone infrastructure, and we have different variants of this as you will see later. Traffic in the ad hoc network typically is node to node. That means it's peer traffic. In the mesh network, most of the traffic is between the node and the gateway, or the node and the router. Okay? Comparing between sensor and mesh networks, sensor networks typically are bandwidth limited. Typically, okay? They don't operate very fast. So we saw that in the case of Bluetooth, Zigbee, LoRa, Sigfox, low bandwidth. Okay, mesh network, no problem with bandwidth. Okay, sensor networks. You can see my arrow. Okay, sensor networks. Most of the time, the sensors are stationary. In the case of the mesh networks, it can be mobile, although some may be fixed. Sensor networks energy is a problem because a lot of sensors are battery operated. So they have to be careful with energy efficiency. Mesh network, no problem, because they usually have no problem with power because they may have AC power somewhere. Sensor networks are resource constrained. Your sensor nodes are typically very basic devices, but most are basic devices. Alright, not a lot of powerful computational or storage capabilities. So that's why I say resource. Whereas in the mesh network, not necessarily so. And again, for the sensor network, then traffic is mainly from the node to the gateway. Similarly for the mesh network, typically node to the gateway. Okay, so there's a comparison of this. I won't go in much detail. I think you can read it up. You know, in the case of mesh network, bandwidth is okay, but not fantastic. All right. The main thing is that it is not too costly to set up for mesh network. Okay, not too costly. And then if you compare with Wi-Fi, of course Wi-Fi can also be set up as a mesh network. Okay? Then because it's wireless, there's no wiring cost or limited wiring cost. Bandwidth is not as great as 802.11, but pretty good still. Can have many APs, all right? And again, the problem is the cost. The more APs you have, then of course the higher the cost, because most of the APs in the mesh network operate in dual modes, because they need to operate in one technology, wireless technology with the backbone, and another cheaper technology with other modes. So that's why the cost is higher. Okay? Whereas Wi-Fi, all same technology. Same technology. Okay, you compare with cellular, all right? Cellular investment infrastructure is very high. Okay? This is no longer true for at least for 5G. Now we're all waiting for 5G. 5G can go up to gigabits already. Okay, but 2.5 to 4G is still quite limited. Okay. Geolocation means you can put it anywhere, and then whereas wireless mesh network is a much more flexible. That's why it's high. Upgrade cost, cellular of course is very high. Okay, so this is a very high overview comparison with different wireless technologies. Okay, basically the network architecture comprises of two classes of devices: the routers, the mesh routers, and the mesh clients. The mesh clients are the nodes. Okay, so the mesh routers, as the name suggests, right? They behave as intermediaries to relay a traffic to the backbone. Okay. Whereas for the mesh clients, it does have the capability to also relay traffic, but it's done in a very simple form because of the multi-hop capability. Okay, but in a very simple form. And there are three classifications of architecture: the infrastructure or backbone mesh networks, the client mesh networks, and the hybrid. It's a combination of two. So the first one, the infrastructure and backbone mesh networks, as you can see all these mesh networks out here. Then they are somehow connected to the backbone, and there's the internet there. Okay, internet. So there's a gateway function. Okay, all these are gateway function to the internet. The client acts as a peer. So the client looks like an ad hoc network. In fact, you can see it's infrastructure, client wireless mesh network. Okay, so much of this is peer-to-peer traffic in that case. Okay, and a hybrid will be a combination of the infrastructure, the first one we saw, and the client. This is the hybrid. Okay, so you have a lot of flexibility to do that. All right, so there's some expectation. I don't know whether time will tell. Okay. There's some expectation that the 802.11p, which is the vehicle to infrastructure network, is really a wireless mesh network. So the vehicle to vehicle is kind of like the client infrastructure. And the vehicle to infrastructure, that means it talks to the base station. And the base station is a gateway to the internet. That's the infrastructure part. Okay? But it can have different technologies, and which is what we did for the NUS bus pilot. Because on board the bus, we have actually three technologies. We have the Wi-Fi hotspot, which is one technology. We have DSRC, which is 802.11p, that talks to the base station. And when it cannot find a base station, it will cut over to 4G LTE. So it's actually a heterogeneous network. So that's a real wireless mesh network using multiple technologies. Okay? So it's an example of this. Okay? All right, these are the general characteristics. I won't read this in detail. Number one is, in general, it does not require centralized control, and that's its strength. Cellular will require centralized control. Mobile radio, okay? It's not required. Number two is, it has the multi-hop feature. So it is like a cousin to ad hoc network. Okay. Number 3 is it's self-configuring. So that makes it easy to set up. Okay, self-configuring. For this, the nodes can be fixed or wireless, so that gives flexibility. Okay, and it can provide for interoperability with different types of technology, which I just gave you an example just now. Okay, heterogeneous wireless networks. So it can be connected to the internet via gateways and routers, and to other networks via gateways and bridges. Traffic patterns tend to be node to gateway rather than node to node, although it's capable of node to node. All right, and it's not energy limited, unlike a sensor network. Okay, you'll find more of that. Find out more of that in part 2 when Prof. Tam tells you about sensor networks. Okay. Advantages: low installation costs, easy to provide coverage to a large area, both outdoors and indoors. Rapid deployment is also self-healing, since it can self-configure, that means if anything breaks, it will also heal itself. Okay? Self-healing, resilient, extensible, scalable. So those are the advantages. So these are some of the application scenarios: home networks, enterprise networks, metropolitan area networks. Okay, as I said, whether V2X will actually come about, hard to say now. It's going to compete with 5G. That's the thing. Okay? Right. So the market will play out in the next few years. Okay. So what are the factors that influence performance? Okay. Obviously, the propagation, the radio part will affect it, whether you use directional antennas, smart antennas, MIMO systems, multiple radios, single radios. We're going to talk a couple of these examples later. Whether you use reconfigurable radios, frequency agile or cognitive radios. Okay. By the way, do you know what cognitive radios, the term? No? Okay. Cognitive radio, the basic principle is this. A cognitive radio will, you see, nowadays, for all our wireless radio-based services, you are allocated specific spectrums, right? Specific spectrum. Wi-Fi has a specific spectrum. Mobile radio has a specific spectrum. Your broadcast TV channels has a specific spectrum, etc. Now, cognitive radio is not limited to specific spectrum. What it does is that it will opportunistically scan the radio spectrum and find where there is idle capacity and use that capacity. That's why it's called cognitive radio. Okay? Typically, of course, it doesn't do it over all radio spectrum. Today, the one that has been standardized is that they will scan the VHF, UHF, TV broadcast spectrum. You look at the TV broadcast spectrum, a lot of TV channel spectrum space is not used. So they are called the primary users of that spectrum. Cognitive radio will come in as secondary because if primary wants it, primary has first priority. But since you're not using it, I borrow your channel first. When you come back, I give it back to you. That's cognitive radio. Alright? But it has to have very clever algorithms so that it will not disrupt the primary user services. Okay? So a lot of research has been going in to look at all these different types of algorithms. Okay? Right. So that's cognitive radio.
So can you elaborate on the application for this radios?
Cognitive radio?
Yeah, application wise.
Okay. The one that has been announced and standardized is called TV white space. You might have heard of that term. Okay. So TV white space is it's a licensed spectrum. It's not like Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi anybody can set up. So because that is in the instrumentation, scientific and medical band, what they call the ISM band. For cognitive radio, because you're using the spectrum of the TV channels, the TV broadcaster paid money for that spectrum, you know. But now you're stealing, borrowing that channel from him. Okay? So the intent is to allow, not the big telcos, the small guys who want to very quickly set up an infrastructure. All right, because the big telcos like the Singtels, the StarHubs and all that, they already paid a lot of money for their mobile radio capability. All right, so one example that we have worked with one supplier, which is a subsidiary of SingPower. Okay, so say, I don't want to pay all this money to the telco, but I need to get access for my services, all right, without going through them, and yet set up the infrastructure in a relatively modest cost. So they use the TV white space. Okay, so they set up their infrastructure, all right, and they piloted this at University Town. I cannot remember, I think I mentioned this last week. One of the residential hall to make that a sort of semi-smart residential room. So they put in telemetering, put in a Wi-Fi hotspot, free hotspot, okay? And the telemetering is to allow them to monitor the electricity usage so that I can charge you. But instead of going through Singtel or StarHub or M1, one of the providers, to get the data back to their cloud, they use the TV white space. Because they own that infrastructure, because paid for the license for that. Okay. All right, so these are all some of the other things, connectivity, quality of service, interoperability, because security is always a big problem, right? Yeah. But I don't know, no matter what we do with security, the problem is not the technology, it's the people. It's the whistleblowers and the people who steal data, right? You cannot control them. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about the MAC layer. All right, and how does MAC layer compare with other MACs? Okay. Now, because of the multi-hop capability and the need to connect to the internet through the gateway and router, many of the other MAC protocols cannot be used as is. All right, okay? They are not particularly good at dealing with these additional requirements. So classical MAC protocols are typically only one hop. All right, but now we're dealing with multiple hops. All right, and then because we want to have a system which is self-configuring, that means there must be additional features inside there for that self-configuring capability to be implemented. Okay? Then you don't want it to be centralized control. Many of the protocols are centralized control. Okay? Able to communicate with its neighbors, self-organizing, I already mentioned. Mobility. Now, if you want mobility and you want to maintain a session, there must be additional things inside there to allow that to happen. Okay, even our Wi-Fi doesn't handle mobility seamlessly. As I say, you walk out this room, your connection will break. Until you find another Wi-Fi AP strong enough, it will reconnect. But whatever you are doing is broken. It's not like a mobile phone, you walk everywhere. Your line is still connected, right? It's different. Okay? So there are various approaches. One is to enhance existing MAC protocols, or the other is to propose new protocols. Okay? The other thing that is very popular in terms of consideration is to have multiple channels. In other words, you don't just establish one channel, you have multiple channels. All right, and we'll see some examples afterwards. Okay, so in the left figure, you are using only one channel, all right, and that channel is shared by everybody. So if somebody is talking, you have to keep quiet. So on the average, because you talk and you listen, so your bandwidth that you have is, B is your bandwidth is half the bandwidth, because half the time you're listening and half the time you're talking. The second example is when you have multiple channels. In this case, the example is 2 channels. So in 2 channels, then 2 conversations can be going on at the same time, and so you get a doubling of the capacity. All right. The third one is, instead of being arranged in a grid-like fashion, now is arranged in a collinear fashion. You also still get that kind of advantage when you have multiple channels, and that's why a lot of research was done to look at the performance of multi-channel protocols. Okay, so this is just an illustration. So back to single channel. Okay, how to deal with single channel? How to improve the existing MAC? All right. Some of them will use some enhancements. So here is a survey. So there's a whole bunch of papers inside here if you're interested to see what they're doing. Okay, so one approach is to improve existing MAC. Another is to do cross-layer design, cross-layer optimization. Right? Because if you recall the protocol stack, you have the physical layer, the data link, the network, the transport, etc. And the MAC layer is sitting between the data link and the bit of the network. Okay? So if you have information from this, you can improve the performance across these layers. So that's cross-layer optimization. Okay? And of course, you can also design new MAC protocols. Okay? So now with the existing MAC protocols, you can play around with the contention window and the backup procedures to improve performance. You can play around with that, but the improvements will be limited because you're still depending on the traditional MAC protocol. They're not making substantial changes there. If you use cross-layer, you can do a little bit better. So there were 2 kind of schemes that were proposed. One is to use directional antenna. The other is to use power control. So by adjusting the power, you can determine how far is your coverage. Dynamically determine how far is your coverage. Okay? And given that you can dynamically determine how far is your coverage, you can do trade-offs between interference, which causes collisions, okay, and throughput. There are trade-offs that you can optimize. Okay, so the enhancements that use directional antennas or DAN, directional antennas, they potentially can eliminate the exposed node problem if the antenna beam, so you can do beam steering here, and we have more examples later. If you can do beam steering accurately, there's still hidden node problem that exists, unfortunately. Although some new solutions have tried to reduce this, problem is cost. Whenever you have directional antennas, the complexity goes up. All right, and there are various pros and cons. For the power-based methods, they are good for dense networks because you can tune the power level. But hidden node still exists, and in fact may be worse in certain instances. If you use new MAC protocols, all right, some of the considerations are to look at it by using time division multiple access or code division multiple access. But combining this with TDMA and CDMA means you may have interoperability problems with legacy networks. It's not easy to interoperate all this. So you have those problems and complexities. Okay, so there's still research. I don't know how much more research are being done here, but there's still some research using TDMA or CDMA. Okay, let's talk about using directional antennas. Okay, there's several slides here to talk about some of the issues. There's an issue called deafness. All right, now the nodes can operate in 2 modes, either in the directional mode, in which they can have a beam that is steered in a certain direction, or they can operate in the omnidirectional mode. But if they operate in the directional mode, okay, here is one example of a problem called deafness. Okay, so in this example, you have node A and E are communicating, as you can see here. Node A and E. So you can see that they're using directional antennas here, right? Okay, A and E. This guy wants to send data, so he sends an RTS. But this is B now. He initiates an RTS which he intends to go for to C. However, because A's beam is not looking in this direction, this RTS packet transmission is blind to A because his beam is facing a different direction. Okay? So A is deaf to the RTS sent in omnidirectional mode by B, okay, as you can see here. So because of that, he doesn't hear the CTS coming back. Okay? So it times out and then he has to try again. So you have this problem, so-called deafness. On the other hand, the exposed node C, this is the exposed node C, receives the RTS from B and stops its possible initiative to transmit. So this is the exposed terminal now. Because he heard the RTS, say, okay, I'll be a good boy, I will not disturb the guy. Okay? So depending on where C wants to send data now, because if you send outside here, there should not be a problem because, and that's where your exposed terminal comes in. Alright, so in any case, these two guys, A and E, are talking, so they are deaf to everybody else. So that's the deafness problem. Question? Okay, the next problem is called circular deadlock. Okay? A, B, and C try to send RTS to B, C, and A. So A wants to send RTS to B, B wants to send RTS to C, C wants to send RTS to A. But A wants to send to B. B is not looking in this direction, in this southwesterly direction. B is looking in this southeasterly direction, so he never heard the RTS. Same for here. B wants to send the RTS to C, but C is looking in this direction, so it didn't hear the RTS. Finally, again, C wants to send the RTS to A, but A is looking in the northeasterly direction, so he did not hear this RTS. So this is called circular deadlock. Everybody looking in the wrong direction. Okay, circular deadlock. Okay, here's an example of hidden knot. Okay. So the good thing about beamforming is that if you beamform, then you can have multiple transmissions going on in the same neighborhood because you are only looking or hearing in a certain direction. Okay? So node B is sending to A in directional mode. Node B is sending to A in directional mode. Node E is sending to C in directional mode. Okay? B is in the interference range of E. B is in the interference range of E because this guy is sending it in this direction, okay? But because its directional antenna mode does not hear the CTS of C, does not hear because he's listening in the wrong direction, okay? B is hidden from E, okay? B is hidden from E. So if B wants to send to A, if B wants to send to A, is ended, and B wants to send to C or E, then it tries, and then what happens is collision because he doesn't know of this conversation earlier. B is unaware of the conversation between C and E. So he thinks nothing is happening, it's clear. So he tries to send an RTS to C. Alright? And because it's omnidirectional, C could receive this, and then it collects with the data coming from this side. Okay? Yeah. Here's another example. So although directional antennas can help some of the problems, this hidden and exposed terminal problem is still not fully solved now. So this is a hidden node due to asymmetric gain in O mode and D mode. Alright, what this means is this. If I go directional, I can send the signal much further because I'm directing the power. If you go in O mode, the range goes down. For the same average power, the coverage of O mode will be less than that of the throw for D mode. Okay, and that's what the diagram is showing us. Alright? Okay. So nodes remain in O mode while idle and of physical layer carrier sensing. That means when you do CSMA, carrier sensing, you are in O mode so that you can hear in all directions. Okay, that's what this part is telling us. They only switch to D mode, switch to directional mode for active transmission. So long as you're listening, you go to O mode. But when you transmit, you go to D mode. Okay? Node C, as you can see here, node C is out of transmission range of B, because B is in O mode and not in D mode right now. So while idle, C is unaware of the B to A communication here. While idle, because he didn't hear the O mode, you see. The O mode was used to send the RTS and get the CTS. But this signal didn't go far enough here. Didn't hear it. Alright, so it's not aware of this. So suppose C has packet to send to either A or B. C switches to D mode for this transmission, which interferes with the reception of A's packet at B. Alright, so that's got collision interference as a result of that. And you can go on and on with all these scenarios of all these problems. So we've gone through quite a number of these scenarios already. Alright, so the thing is, how do you cleverly use O and D mode when you're doing all this? That's the trick. Okay, what's the clever way to do it? Okay? So the combinations of DO modes are proposed when transmitting, receiving RTS and CTS and data packets. Alright? So we have, I think, three different scenarios here. The first scenario is to transmit RTS and CTS in a directional mode. So if you do that, it appears that it reduces deafness. It unfortunately reduces spatial reuse. Alright? But it does reduce the amount of interference. So I'm not going to read the smaller bullet points. Okay? The other alternative, so this is in O mode, omnidirectional mode. If it's in the directional mode, then it improves spatial reuse and transmission range because you can blast it further because it's narrower. But you need prior knowledge of the direction of the nodes. So there must be some overheads here to tell the nodes in which direction to steer their beam. If you want to go to node C, you must go in this direction. If you want to go to node D, you must go in this direction. Somebody has, all this information exchange has to take place. Otherwise, you don't know where to steer your beam. Okay, nothing comes for free. You can get improvements in the capacity because of the spatial reuse. Okay, here's an example: neighbor-aware antenna steering heuristic. So this is an example of one method in which to share that information. Okay, so each node maintains tables of who is communicating with whom, as well as information on the direction of each of its neighboring nodes. Okay? So at transmit time, the node adjusts its beam width to be wide enough so that the nodes recently involved in the transmission with the destination node receive the current transmission. So you need very accurate transmit angle estimation to do all this. Okay, now the last one. So the first one was omnidirectional. Omnidirectional, the problem as we saw was that you don't have as good spatial reuse. Alright, and interference is higher. Now you can use a combination of the two, O and D. When you use O, when you use D. You can combine O, that is omnidirectional, and directional transmission of the control messages. One of the RTS and CTS packets is transmitted in D mode, the other in O mode. And you compare how this will perform, comparison of modes for control message transmission. So you use D mode, exchange for RTS, CTS. So you got two possibilities. So that paper is in the list of references that I gave you. It compares all these different modes and how they operate. Okay? And that comparison is summarized under this. Okay? You can see directional mode, tone based. So that's the DMAC algorithm. Okay? DOOO, DOOO, and so on. Alright? Okay, so these are still single radio, single channel, but with steered antennas. Okay? What about multiple channels? Multiple channels, there are three variants that have been explored. You can have a single radio with multiple channels, so that's the first one. But only one channel can be active at a time. You can have multiple channel, multiple radios. Or you can have single channel, multiple radios. Right? Three. So in which case, the third one is like saying, I got multiple radios on board. Each radio has a channel. This radio has a channel, this radio has a channel. Whereas the first one, I have one radio but I have multiple channels. Okay, that's the first one. So the papers that describe this in detail are mentioned here, 1, 2, and 3. But because you have multiple channels, there is coordination. And if you have multiple radios, you also need coordination. So the question is, what type of coordination algorithm do you use to maximize performance? All right? Of course, if you have multiple radios, multiple transceiver systems in multiple radios, cost goes up. Okay, cost goes up. Okay, so we'll look at some examples. This is the first one. MMAC is a multi-channel MAC, single radio. Okay, three main functions. So there's a certain data structure for all the channels. Okay, there's negotiation of which channel to use during a certain time interval called the ATIM window. All right, ad hoc traffic indication message. So that's where you do the negotiation of which channel to use. And the negotiation is done in a common channel, a predefined common channel. So this is a messaging channel, if you like. So the criteria is to select a channel with the lowest count of source destination pairs. That means less traffic. Lowest count of source destination pairs. Hopefully less traffic. Okay. But again, there are problems and issues. All right. The RTS, CTF do not adequately deal with this channel separation problem. Synchronization has to be done, so there's extra effort here. The time that it takes to switch from one channel to the other makes it inefficient, because 22 milliseconds is quite a long time. The criteria based on the least number of source destination pairs may not necessarily be the best criteria. This particular approach takes care of the hidden nodes, but not the exposed node. Okay, so this is the MMAC. Another variation is the multi radio unification protocol or MUP protocol. So now you have multiple NICs. A NIC is like a radio card if you like. Okay, a NIC. Network interface card. Okay, the channels on all NICs are orthogonal and fixed. That means they don't interfere with one another. And they are fixed. The major functions is to find out who are his neighbors and classify them into one of two types. Legacy, that means those that they already know of, and doing some activities that was in the past, and enable nodes. Then you select the NIC based on the shortest one hop measurement. So that will be the round trip time, or TT time. Okay. Then you utilize selected NIC for a certain time frame, 10 to 20 minutes, 10 to 20 seconds, and then you do the selection again. So in other words, it is to provide fairness so that you don't hop a particular channel. Okay, you use for a short while and you rediscover. So that's to provide fairness. All right. Again, there are open issues because it's limited to one hop. Then, if the network is not dense enough, you may not be able to find a neighbor. Okay. It has this random time period for each selected NIC, so that can be disruptive if you need something for a long time, because you have to keep renegotiating to find another new channel. Because of the switching, then you have to make sure that you take care of packet ordering, because some things may arrive before